morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Here on Earth podcast. My name is AJ Mansour. I am your host, and despite what it might have seemed, the Here on Earth podcast is not gone. It has just taken a bit of a hiatus, and we're back now with a wonderful interview today with an influencer of faith from our own community here in Minneapolis, and more on deck, ready to get back into another, let's call it another season of the Here on Earth podcast. If you haven't been able to join us in the past, by all means, please catch up on the old episodes that are available on iHeartRadio, iTunes, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We've had a lot of good conversations with athletes, musicians, influencers of faith, pastors, business people, about their faith, about how God is working in their lives and the cool things that He has been doing to open up some doors for them. So go back and check out those archives. Lots of wonderful conversations from the first couple series that we've pushed out, and another one on tap today. Today's conversation will be with a gentleman named Terrry Esau. He is an author, multiple books, most recently a very interesting one. We'll get to that in a little bit. He is also a philanthropist and he works in the nonprofit world, coming from the business world. So lots of cool things, cool background, cool history behind him. And we get to talk about that and talk about what took him from the corporate world to nonprofit, and then ultimately to following a passion of being an author and writing books. So without further ado, let's jump on into our interview today on the Here on Earth podcast with Terrry Esau. Looking at your bio on LinkedIn, on top of many things that you've done, it lists that you have composed and written music for a bunch of commercials for Target, McDonald's, Pepsi. The list goes on and on. First off, what is that experience like, and how did you get into the world of commercial music and writing and composing for advertising?
First of all, you can't believe everything you see in bios, but it's a long story of how I got into it, but I had never been in a recording studio in my life, but I always thought, hey, how cool would that be? Actually, my very first day of music theory class in college, our professor said, welcome to college. Go home, write a jingle about milk, come back tomorrow and perform it for the class. So that was my intro to the jingle business. And then 3 years later, after I had I decided to take a year off of college because I had no money at all. And I worked for a year, and then I was teaching guitar lessons in 2 different music stores, 55 lessons a week. All I did all day long was teach junior high boys how to play Smoke on the Water. And I was about to lose my mind, and I decided to quit one day, and I thought, remember that first assignment I had in music theory class, write a jingle about milk. I wonder if anybody would hire me to do that. So that led me through this long process, and it took me about a month before I got hired by anybody to do a project. But then the whole thing started building. I started doing, really, really small, like a flower shop jingle and stuff like that. And then after a while, I had enough exposure so I could walk into ad agencies and say, hey, I've done this commercial and that commercial. And then I started doing local Minneapolis, and then I started doing regional, and then I started getting called for national jingles. So I've done commercials for McDonald's and Pepsi and Harleys and Hondas and Target and kitty litter. Almost everything in between. My jingle career has allowed me to work with everyone. I literally got to work with Prince on one thing. I got to work with Jim Henson on some Sesame Street stuff. I actually did a Target Christmas campaign with Amy Grant, and I did a Sam Goody thing with Alice Cooper. So, my jingle career has been all over the place, but it's been pretty cool thing, pretty fun.
Sure. You talked about your decision to take a break from school. You talked about your decision to quit the guitar lessons. Those sorts of big decisions seem to kind of be, pivotal moments in your life. And at some point, it appears, correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that you made a pretty pivotal decision to move a little bit away from the corporate world where you were doing the business, the jingles and the commercial writing, and kind of follow some of your passions. One of those passions, free bikes for kids, we'll get into a little bit more. Another passion was writing. What was taking that leap and kind of taking a step away from traditional business paths and embarking on your own adventure like?
Yeah, so an interesting story. So I got called one day from an ad agency and they said, we want you to do a jingle for this product called Inhibitor Bolus, which you've probably never heard of. It's a big pill that a farmer forces a cow to swallow, goes through the cow system, and when the cow drops its pie in the pasture, it's laced with a chemical that inhibits the reproduction of flies. So I'm on the phone with this ad agency. I go, so wait, you want me to write a jingle about a product that kills flies in cow pies? And they said, yeah. And I refer to that as my first epiphany, where I go, I don't think I can do this for the rest of my life. I just thought, I think, I don't know, I think I can maybe use whatever talents I have in a different way. And that started me, opening my eyes. The way it always works with me is when I feel like the way God moves me from one thing to another is when I start to get restless. So when I start feeling restless, then I feel like, okay, God might be trying to tell me something here, so I should probably keep my eyes open. So that led me into this thing where I just started writing short stories. And then I'd get invited to share them at first, like at youth group kind of things at churches and stuff like that. And then at retreats and things. And all of a sudden people started asking, well, do you have a book of these stories? And I go, book? Why would I have a book? I'm a jingle writer, but then I started thinking and I sent it off to some publishers, and shocked me. I ended up getting 3 offers from publishers to publish these stories. So then I kind of started going, okay, I kind of think my jingle career is on its last legs here. I kind of, once I start to lose passion in something, then I don't pursue it. And once you don't pursue something, especially in business, if you're not pursuing it, it's not pursuing you generally. Sure. So it just started to fade. And by then I had, and then I had my second book published, and that led to a series of speaking engagements where I traveled around the country for 3 or 4 years, and I spoke in a different church every Sunday based on the concept of that second book. Which it was kind of a fun thing. I decided to do this spiritual experiment. I said, I'm going to wake up every day for 30 days, begin my day with a 3-word prayer. Surprise me, God. But not surprise me with a new Escalade or whatever, surprise me with whatever you want to bring into my day. Mm-hmm. And then I decided I was going to keep a journal of those 30 days. And I did, and actually it ended up getting published. My journal of the 30 days ended up getting published. Day 1 was chapter 1, day 2 was chapter 2. And that led to this thing where I started getting invited to churches around the country saying, would you come and speak? Our church wants to do this 30-day experiment. So yeah, that was a bizarre little twist that I didn't see. The title of that book was Surprise Me, and I feel like God's been surprising me for a long time now, and I don't think there's any end to it.
For someone like yourself who kind of has successfully made the jump from what people would call traditional workplace to a little bit of being your own boss or doing something on your own, is there any tip that you would provide people that are kind of wavering? Maybe they're not happy with what they're doing, or they have a passion that they're just scared to kind of jump in head first. Is there anything that when you look back on that time in your life that was pivotal in that decision making for you to say, okay, now's the time, we're stepping away here and we're going in this direction?
I don't think there's a one size fits all for that question. I think everybody kind of has to weigh those things on their own. A lot of it, I think, has to do with personality. I've been self-employed since I was 19. So for me, taking a risk didn't feel so much like a risk because I didn't been investing in my ideas my whole life. So, but I think fear is a horrible thing. And so many people do not do what they feel passionate about or even what they're gifted in because they're afraid of letting go of something that's safe and secure. And, maybe if this COVID-19 thing has taught us anything, it's that whatever you planned is not as safe and secure as you thought it was anyhow. So, and I'm also a huge believer in, I kind of look at the a lot of people talk about the Holy Spirit as a dove. I think that's kind of bogus. I look at the Holy Spirit as a sharp elbow, and my job is to have tender ribs. And when the Spirit nudges me in the ribs, I have to have tender enough ribs to feel it. And then I have to go, okay, now I need to act on it. It's one thing to feel the nudge, but now you have to go, what do I do about that nudge? And, a career move is a big nudge, but we get nudges every day. Mm-hmm. We have that choice. Do we react? Do we respond? What do we do?
Absolutely. It was safe to say that free bikes for kids was one of those nudges that you acted upon?
Right. So after I wrote the Surprise Me book, which was about being present and aware of God's presence in our days, then I wrote a follow-up book called Be the Surprise, which basically was, hey, once you felt the nudge, now you get to go out and be the surprise for other people, for the world. So, and that kind of, in a way, led into this. I'm a bikeaholic from day one. I had a paper out because I got paid to ride my bike when I was a kid, and my brother and I would put on bike shows. We'd build ramps and collect neighborhood kids, and we'd put on shows and see how many kids we could jump over. And when I was 16, my buddy and I got on our bikes here in Minnesota. We rode our bikes to the West Coast and back. And then in my 40s, I started racing bikes, and then I started crashing bikes. But I started a cycling club that would meet in my driveway every Saturday morning, and we go out and do training rides. And I just started noticing all of my friends had little, my kids were now getting into high school, so their little bikes were just sitting there collecting dust. All of my friends' bikes were collecting dust. And I thought, well, this is stupid. Why are these bikes sitting here when there are kids who don't have bikes? So I called Care 11 TV because I did all of their news themes for like 30 years, their music for their stuff. And I said, can I come on and invite people to donate bikes to me and my cycling club, and we'll fix them up and we're going to give them away to kids for Christmas. And they said, sure. In 2 weeks, we took in about 250 or 300 bikes. We fixed them up and gave them away. My friend said, that's fun. Let's do it again next year. Started a little earlier, gave away 750. Friend said, that's fun. Let's do it again next year. We gave away 1,500 bikes. And I said that, yeah, this is fun, but this doesn't feel like a hobby anymore. And I said, how about if we form a nonprofit? I'll go find a corporate sponsor, put a board together. Allina Health said yes. And that year we gave away 5,000 bikes. And now we've given away 80,000 bikes. We're in 12 cities, getting ready to launch into a bunch more cities. We were supposed to launch in Chicago last weekend. And that stupid COVID thing screwed that up. But yeah, so it's one of those things, that was a simple nudge, like, hey, you've got a bike in your garage that's collecting dust, and so do your friends. Nudge. What are you going to do about it? I literally, AJ, I thought I was starting a 2-week hobby. I thought it was 2 weeks done. And here it is, 10 years later, 80,000 bikes. Our board just set a goal of giving away 1 million bikes in the next 5 years.
Wow.
So we have some interesting strategy and plans. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, well, absolutely. There's accomplishment that comes with probably writing a jingle that you hear on a commercial, and you kind of know that you did something good. But I would imagine that there's a different sense of accomplishment when you see something like Free Bikes for Kids that starts to take off, or even that first year when it was just a handful and you didn't know how big it was going to get, and you're handing a bike over to a little kid and seeing the joy on their face. I would imagine that that's a different feeling than hearing your commercial open up, or your audio open up the 10 o'clock news, or your commercial on a McDonald's, or your spot on a McDonald's spot.
Right. There's, well, I was going to, the ego is an interesting thing. and, if we're all honest, we all have some ego, right? And we all need affirmation. And you're right, it's a different kind of affirmation that you get with the jingle thing. It was fun to be sitting beside Prince in his studio when we were mixing one of my songs. But when I saw a kid get the bike and saw just this, this unadulterated joy, and then you look at the parents, and some of the parents had tears rolling down their faces because they were not going to be able to give their kid a present for Christmas. That's a pretty cool thing, and I always, one of the reasons I started Free Bikes for Kids was Jesus said, hey, there are two things: love God, love your neighbor as yourself, right? It's really easy to say you love the poor, or the under-resourced, the underprivileged, the underserved. But if you actually do something, that's a way to say love in a tangible way. And I don't think God wants us to just do lip service to love. I think he actually wants us, maybe you need to sacrifice a little, but do something tangible. Love these people in tangible ways. And that feeds me in ways that, doing a jingle for Target or whatever, that fed me in a different way. But this is something where you go, this is soul nourishment,
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
No, absolutely.
That can sustain you a little longer, I think.
Yeah. Make those days cranking away in the shop, making those bikes, and the tough meetings, or just the disappointment of, expecting to launch in Chicago and having a worldwide pandemic kind of put a crimp in that plan, and can help you push through that. I apologize. We're obviously doing this via Zoom. I've got my son right here humming into the microphone. I've got the dog downstairs barking. So a little ambiance added to the podcast today. But your most recent endeavor, and maybe it's just on the public side of this, because obviously you've been working on this behind the scenes for a couple of years now, is a book that you had kind of been debuting on Facebook, reading a chapter a day before Easter, leading up to it, a book titled Jesus, a novel that you, in what we'll call the preface, a video that you kind of recorded on Facebook to kind of share what this was going to be about and what this journey would look like for you, reading a chapter a day. You mentioned that it's a book that you've kind of been waiting your entire life to write. Tell us a little bit about this project, because it's super interesting. And I think that, read to in the hands of the right people, this is the kind of thing that could be very impactful on people that are a little jaded towards organized religion, maybe.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you should know I'm a little jaded toward organized religion. Yeah, there's a lot that's not right or good, and a lot that's not necessarily all that Jesus-like. I kind of measure everything by the life and words and actions of Jesus. So, but here's I don't see if you resonate with this. I think our culture is disinterested in Jesus because of, to a great degree, because of what organized religion looks like in our culture. I think our culture looks at Jesus and they go, oh, well, he's white, he's Republican, he's health and wealth, he's for the people on the upper tier. I better be careful of the things I say here.
No, I
Because
feel you though. Yeah.
I can irritate a lot of people with some of my opinions. But I look at that and go, Jesus wasn't really any of those things. He wasn't political. He wasn't favoring the wealthy. He didn't have all of those secondary motives. He was generally liked by the downtrodden. He was liked by the neglected of society. So I think we've done a disservice. We've portrayed Jesus in this westernized sort of cultural Christianity that doesn't really reflect the heart of Jesus and the character of Jesus. So I thought, I think if our culture saw the real Jesus, they'd be interested in him. I don't think they've rejected the real Jesus. They've rejected the caricature of Jesus. So I thought, what could I do to help introduce them to what this is just my opinion, what I think of as the real Jesus. And I go, what if I dropped him into our culture? But what if I dropped him in for the first time? So the premise is Jesus didn't come let's say Jesus hypothetically didn't come 2,000 years ago. So first of all, you go, if that didn't happen, there's no Catholic Church, there's no Protestant Church, there's no New Testament, there's no Peter, Paul, and Mary, there's no Christmas, there's no Easter, the list goes on and on. There's maybe no Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, there's no Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and all those great thinkers, Martin Luther King Jr. So I go, okay, so it would be a different world, but now I drop Jesus into that culture right here in Minneapolis. And I got to write the stories and see how he would invite people to come along with him. Who would he invite to be his disciples, or his tribe, as I call them in the book? What miracles would he do? What stories would he tell? How would our culture receive him? So I dropped him in this very strange, kind of almost dystopian type of culture that lacked in Christianity over 2,000 years and was filled in by some other weird religions, which is kind of a kick. I got to make up some religions. And one of the religions, that I made up really hated him. And that's where the conflict came in. But I think in writing this story, I think if people read this, they're going to get a different picture of Jesus than they're seeing in our culture. And they're going to get a picture of Jesus, of what it might have been like had he come here now, 2,000 years later for the first time.
Yeah. What was the process for, I've never written a book, so I don't know the process of writing any book, period, but writing a book like this, that is, important. It's based on hypotheticals that you're kind of creating. You're almost, you think about Tolkien creating a different world and a different universe and all these different creatures and characters. In a way, that's kind of what you were doing, because you're erasing pivotal moments of history. That has to be a difficult thing. It has to be a thing that you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's over and over to kind of double check to make sure you're not forgetting that this didn't exist. Was that a more of a painstaking process than, let's say, writing a different book that you have?
Not really. For me, this was, my first book was a collection of fictitious short stories that put Jesus or God in interesting situations. So that it was fiction. But to me, I think in metaphor. I think in allegory. I think in stories. I think that's why I was good in the music business, because I took ideas and gave them melodies and rhythms and structure so that the music told a story. So I don't know. I got to tell you, AJ, it was so much fun. I mean, writing this book was one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. And by the way, that's one way to tell if you found your niche in what your gifting is that God has given you.
Mm-hmm.
If you start doing it and you lose complete track of time and you're so sucked in and the story carries you along, you might have found your calling. And so for me, it was like, I'm sure there, I look at it now and I go, there are some places in there where I shouldn't have said that because it's, that hadn't happened, or, it's like I use the word church, and the term church didn't really come around until Jesus. So,
Sure.
but we have language now that means things. And I go, I can't just make up language. So I kind of have to go with a little bit of the words that I've been given from 2,000 years that our culture understands. So, but it was just the most fun experience. And I got to tell you, it was profound for me too, because in some ways I thought I was trying to introduce Jesus to our culture. And in some ways I reintroduced him to myself, and I go, oh man, I'm seeing Jesus in a whole new way, because I'm having to think about this, like, okay, I have to write all new parables, and you go, okay, if I were Jesus walking down the street today and I wanted to tell a story that would help the artistic community understand what he was saying, what would I say? If I wanted to help the business people understand what he's trying to say, what story would I tell? So it was a fun, profound, difficult, challenging experience that I just got sucked into, and I had so much fun. And I really do think, I really want to make this into a movie, to be honest with you. That was my first idea, that this is a better movie than a book.
Sure.
But it costs frickin' lot of money to make a movie. So
Yeah, I would imagine so. The method that you sort of debuted this in, sharing it on your social media channels, you clearly have a religious background, and many of your social media friends might follow that suit and have that knowledge of Jesus, that knowledge of the church. But you also don't seem like a guy who kind of pigeonholes yourself into that Christian bubble. So some of your friends are not religious. I'm interested to see what the feedback has been, I guess, as you've kind of shared this part of your heart and this thing you've been working on for so long, what the initial feedback has been from people who have been listening.
Well, that's a great question. And I love that, because this has been one of the most satisfying things of this whole process. And you're right. I have a lot of friends who are Christians. I have a lot of friends who are atheists and everything in between. And I actually love that. I enjoy being in that place. And another interesting thing is, whenever I've written of all of my books, when you send a proposal to a publisher, they always say, who's your audience? Every one of my books, I've said the same thing. I'm writing to people who are spiritually curious. I don't care if they're Christians or if they're atheists or Buddhists or Muslims. I don't care. But I want them to be curious, because, like, when you lose your curiosity, now you have your fist around certainty, and you think you have everything figured out. And that's a dangerous place, no matter what you believe. So I want to write for people who are still going, I can probably learn something more here, and I'm open to learn something more. So I'm writing for those people. But what was interesting was, I don't know, I'm not keeping score on this, but in some ways, I think more atheists have shared some of my writing certainly than some very conservative, what I might call fundamentalist Christians.
Sure.
So, and I'm happy about that, because, to be honest, I didn't really write this book for people who attend church. I wrote this book for people who who have written off Jesus and might be willing to take a new look. And that's why, I mean, the book is offensive. I've not pitched, this is the first book that I've written. I did not pitch to any Christian publishers, because, some of the people that Jesus chooses to be his followers in this book have fairly colorful language. One of the guys he chooses runs a tattoo parlor. I have a couple of tattoos, and when I got them, they didn't, I didn't hear church talk there. So I wanted to create real characters, because, and quite honestly, do you really think Peter, James, and John didn't let a few 4-letter words fly every once in a while? I mean, they were rough, tough guys when Jesus found them. So I just thought the last thing I want to do is write a Pollyanna book that doesn't smack of reality. And they accused in Luke, what is it, Luke 5? They're, the Pharisees are accusing Jesus of hanging around with the disreputable people, the riffraff. Those were the people who loved him. Those were the people who were attracted to him. And it's interesting, in our culture, when those people look at Christians, they say, oh, they're the judgmental ones. But nobody said that about Jesus. Those people, they loved him. And he didn't water down anything with them, but he didn't go, you got to earn my love first by, clean up your act, and then I might consider loving you. That's not the Jesus of the gospel. So that's the picture I'm trying to create in this book. And it's a strange book. If you get around to it, I'd love to hear your thoughts, but it was one of the strangest storytelling experiences of my life. And I hope people get sucked into it.
Yeah. One last question for you, and then we'll let you have the rest of your day, because it's actually a pretty nice Minnesota day here. I would imagine when you are embarking on a journey like this, where you're essentially modernizing or rewriting Scripture in a way, is there a extra sense of care that you feel like you need to take so that you're accurately portraying what the Bible portrays, and not letting maybe some of your own perceptions in that could take away from actually what the Bible is saying? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
That's a great question, and you nailed my one fear in writing this book. I mean, you're talking about confirmation bias or spiritual traditional history of how I grew up, and this. Yeah, I haven't told many people this, but I did. When I started writing this book, I felt the weight of that question. And so I decided, here's what I'm going to do. And just so you know, I'm not like one of these religious people that does these rituals every day or something like that. But I decided before every writing session, I'm actually going to get on my knees and pray a simple prayer. I said, God, do not let me write anything that misrepresents your heart. And so I did that every time before I sat down to write. And like I said, I'm not a guy. I don't get on my knees to pray. But I just thought, my heart here is to capture his heart. and to communicate his heart to our culture. That's all I wanted to do. And I just thought, I need to take this very seriously. And, and I need to make the words, the red letter words, I need to make them count as best I can the way his words counted, and tell stories that touched hearts and changed hearts. So that was my desire. That was my my hope. Whether I accomplished it or not, you read it and tell me.
No, it's a good way to approach it. Absolutely. Well, Terry, I really appreciate you taking the time to share a little bit about your life, share a little bit about your journey and your heart and the things that you're working on. Before we let you go, how can people get involved with Free Bikes for Kids, and where can people find your writings?
Well, right now for the writings, if you go to Jesus.com, but it's Jesus is spelled JE and then the number 2US, JE2US.com. And actually, just so people know, the book is available to read free. The book is free online. You can actually read it there. You can download a PDF, or you can actually listen to me read the whole book, chapter by chapter. Otherwise, I think you can get my other books on Amazon or stuff like that if you just Google Terrry Esau. Free Bikes for Kids. The website is fb4k.org. FB like free bikes, and then the number 4, and then K as in kids. fb4k.org. And well, maybe I shouldn't even bring this up, but I'm actually just launching another nonprofit, Free Guitars for Kids.
Okay.
So that we've just finished our 501c3 paperwork on that. I felt another nudge in my elbow or in my ribs, and we were supposed to launch this year. I don't know what's going to happen now with COVID, but I'm really excited about this, AJ, because so we're reaching out right now to Carlos Santana, Lenny Kravitz, and a few others. I've talked with the Prince Foundation. I'm going to be meeting with the Grammy Foundation. What we're getting is major artists to do a free concert. You can't buy a ticket to the concert. The only way you can get into the concert is you have to bring a guitar to donate. So we get 10,000 guitars donated in one night. We restring them, whatever we need to do. We give them away to schools, to kids. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to be something I hope people will be seeing a lot of in the next year.
Whole another generation ready for more smoke on the water. Perfect timing.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great song, but after 9 months of playing it, you could lose your mind.
I would imagine so. Terry, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your heart and everything you're doing in our community, but in our world as well. So thank you very much.
And thank you for your podcast. I've been listening to a little bit of it, and I didn't even know it existed. So it's pretty cool. I love what you're doing, and you're finding a great avenue to share your faith too. So kudos to you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, man. There it is again, an interview today with Terrry Esau. You can find him on Facebook. Is his main form of communication with social media. But again, I encourage you to check out all of the organizations. His books are on Amazon. Free Bikes for Kids, you can find that online as well. Support them through monetary donations, bike donations, or just learn about how you can get involved with that organization as well. Thank you to Terry for his time today. Thank you for your time listening today. I pray that you all have a wonderful day, wonderful week, and until the next episode of Here on Earth Podcast, I'm AJ Mansour. We'll see you later.